Now, last week we were talking about Orbán's trip to Kiev first, and then to Moscow, and then to Beijing. Well, Chatham House, the Royal Institute for International Affairs, is going nuts over this. We were talking about how the European leaders were going nuts over this. So I'm just going to run through this article, which is published by Armida van Rij, if that's how you pronounce her name. Orbán is using Hungary's EU Council presidency to bulldoze EU norms, she says. Less than 2 weeks into Hungary's EU Council presidency, Orbán has clearly shown he will not play by the rules. The EU must come up with a response. So let's have a look and see what she is saying. The role of the member state holding the presidency is to drive the legislative agenda by chairing council meetings, ensuring good cooperation with other EU institutions, and ensure continuation of EU policy agenda. So don't do anything to stop the war. Make sure you only reinforce that idea. She goes on to say, while these are Orbán's trips, are technically all bilateral trips, Orbán has tried to create confusion by displaying EU flags in Kiev and using the Hungarian presidency logo on promotional material for his trip to China. How dare he? While these trips are technically, that's a repeat. So travelling to Russia to meet the head of a government under EU sanctions, which has disregarded the territorial integrity of another state, is unprecedented, she says. Perhaps more importantly, enabling confusion over whether he represents Hungary or also the EU on his trips is potentially breaching EU law. To address the challenge of Hungary's democratic backsliding, withholding funds remains perhaps the most effective lever the European Commission has. So we've got to stop giving Hungary any money from the EU. For dealing with a transactional realist like Orbán, even though it has has a limited impact in the past. But instead of withholding funds on an ad hoc basis, she said, the European Commission should make a concerted, long-term and planned effort and focusing on media freedom, civil liberties, and strengthening an independent judiciary with cohesion or agricultural funds used as leverage. So this is really the response that she thinks the EU should be pursuing. She goes on, Orbán is a realist who only responds to hard power. Expressions of anger on social media by other heads of government or leaders of the EU institutions will not bother him in the slightest, especially now he's gaining allies and is no longer as isolated in Europe or on the world stage as he once was. The EU needs a long-term approach for deterring and correcting behaviours by member states that undermine the European project. So I don't know what you think about that, Brian, but I just thought the rhetoric in this was absolutely staggering from this British think tank telling the EU what to do, because at all costs we've got to make sure we continue and build the war rather than, peace is not something we should be looking at all.
No, and I thought it was really excellent that you're going to use agricultural funds, which presumably in the first instance are there to help people grow crops and feed themselves. You're going to use food as a weapon for further war within the EU. But this is the European Union project, Mike. We've been warning about the viciousness of the European Union for a great many years, so I'm really not surprised at all. It's the iron fist in the velvet glove approach, and somebody who stood up for peace. They've made a journey to talk to the Russians on the basis of peace, and they've got to be stamped out of existence. This is utterly brutal. Mark, welcome to your European colleagues. I don't know what your response would be.
Well, what is the European project would be one basic question, right? That Orbán is so, breaking with such impunity. What's he supposed to do? Actually, to meet with Putin and to go to Kiev, and everything he's doing sounds like much more of a logical approach to try and get a handle on the overall situation and bring a ceasefire about. I would think that they should take a more objective look at what he's doing.
I suspect they don't want to look deeper because they might find he's actually doing the right thing. But there we